There's no thrill like discovery. The Discovery Channel. Explore your world.
Now on the History Channel, stories from the pages of time. Stories of triumph and tragedy, adventure and achievement, as we go in search of history. Rites and rituals, they have the power to move us, confuse us, shock us. But no matter how bizarre, are they also the key to understanding what it means to be human? These boys are being taught sacred chants that have been passed on orally from generation to generation. In a remote village in southwest India, a place of worship is being erected, only to be destroyed in 12 days. Anthropologists believe we're witnessing one of the oldest continuously performed rituals on Earth, dating back 3,000 years. It is a complex mystical event that pays homage to the god of fire, Agni. How and why, we may wonder, has it survived this long?
Ritual is the cutting edge of the tool we call religion. It is the active aspect of it. Without ritual, there can be no religious expression. It's action that intends a transformation of state.
These Brahmin priests hope their intense dedication to Agni eventually will transport them into a state of timelessness and renewed energy. For those in the Western world, these may be difficult concepts, but the lives of these holy men are centered on such abstract mystical beliefs.
Ritual is an attempt to drive meaning into the bone, into the psyche, into the muscle. That's one of the reasons it's hard to talk about. It's not some idea that a priest or a shaman has that somebody then illustrates by dancing. It's the dancing or the drumming or the praying or the contemplating. That's the important thing, and we don't get that. We regularly miss that.
The climax to this elaborate tribute to the ancient god of fire is the burning of the temple itself. For these Hindus, the act signifies that their exhaustive prayer ritual has been completed. When this film was made, scholars feared that this might be the last time the remarkable ceremony would be performed. The demanding nature of the rite, as well as modern life itself, may have doomed its survival. But what of other ancient rituals in other cultures? Which ones continue to endure, and why? More than 4,000 years ago, the Egyptians practiced a ritual that was adopted by the Jews. It became a cornerstone of their faith. The Bible tells us that Abraham, at God's command, circumcised himself, removed the foreskin of his penis at the age of 99. What spiritual meaning could this painful act possibly hold for his people?
God says to Abraham, you're going to be the head of a great nation. And I want you always to remember that it comes from you and your loins, and I want a mark of your commitment at the very place where this great nation will spring from.
For Jews then and now, the brief surgery takes place when the boy is 8 days old. It signifies both his forthcoming manhood and fertility. For Muslims, to whom Abraham is also a patriarchal figure, there is no set time frame for circumcision. But in both faiths, the ceremony is considered a time for rejoicing in God's will that they procreate in His name. There seems to be no threat to the future of this simple ritual, perhaps because it relates so directly to the idea of a people's survival. And what of the fertility of future mothers? Are ancient rituals still followed which are believed to ensure successful childbearing? For those who live along the river in the Okrika region of Nigeria, the water is thought of as a mysterious giver of life. While young and old believe in the water spirits, this is a modern village where young girls can expect to receive a high school education. They are also well aware of the growing status of women as equals to males in the Western world. Yet some of them will volunteer to participate in an ancient fertility rite called Iriya, a ritual that is both physically difficult and psychologically stressful.
Having accompanied the girls during their ritual, having filmed it, I understand what they were going through, and they were very anxious, particularly the first day when they had to come out and expose their breasts in the public square. This was difficult for them to do. They had the courage to do it because the women of the community, the older women, knew what they were doing and were supportive. They also had courage because they were painted, they were transformed, their bodies were spiritualized.
5 girls between 15 and 17 have asked their parents to sponsor them this year. It will cost hard-earned money, but most parents want their daughters to do it. For to complete Iriya means the girl is both a virgin and a fertile woman, capable of bearing many healthy children to a future husband. Brass leggings, usually handed down over generations, are fitted from thigh to ankle. During the next 3 weeks of total seclusion, the girls will have great difficulty slipping out at night. If they're tempted, the entire village will hear them. During this long confinement, called going into the fatting house, the girls are fed rich meal after rich meal.
I think it's very important that these girls be nourished for a certain period because they are going to be the nourishers of the next generation. That's the meaning. Sometimes it's hard for them to get all the food down, but they don't have the crazy ideas about dieting that many of our teenagers have. The full body is prized in Africa generally.
The sensuous Iriya ritual dates back long before the arrival of the first missionaries in the 19th century. Just how many centuries, no one knows. As the most dramatic event of the ritual approaches, the girl is bedecked in an ogbudu, 21 layers of woven cloth wrapped around her waist and hips to accentuate her reproductive allure.
When they come out of seclusion and when they dance in the square, this time their bodies are beautiful and they have a very different sense of themselves than they did those first shy moments in the public square. So there is a joy here. The race from the waterside up to the village is an extremely important climax. They are now leaving the world of the water spirits, running up into the village where they will begin to live a real life. One sees the Osokolo with his stick. He is a young man representing the founder of the village. He must strike each girl in order to confer fertility upon her. Girls who complete the Iriya ceremony have received, most importantly, a social definition of womanhood. Their bodies have become spiritual as well as fleshly, and this can never be taken from them.
The 5 girls who completed Iriya now take their place in the Okrika community as courageous women. The traditional ritual has served them well.
Place it on Megan's finger and repeat after me. Megan, I give you this ring.
Megan, I give you this ring.
As a sign of my love.
As a sign of my love.
When it comes to commemorating the 3 major events common to all humans, these moments are both universal and timeless. Each culture has developed its individual ritualistic treatment of them, but there is no doubt as to the meaning of the symbolic gestures. What remains mysterious, however, are some of the ancient rituals we continue to honor between birth, mating, and death. Perhaps none is more fascinating than a long journey many take, neither for business nor recreation. It is known as a pilgrimage. For those of the Muslim faith, there has been an unwavering commitment to a time-consuming and often expensive one known as the Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca.
These are the first motion pictures ever made of a pilgrimage to Mecca, the sacred Muslim journey that many of us had heard about, the mystic rite that for 1,000 years has beckoned millions of Mohammedans to the birthplace of their religion. The pilgrims, many aged and some unable to walk, are fulfilling the call of their faith that they make at least one journey to Mecca in their lifetime. In the heart of the mysterious city stands the massive black mosque where Muhammad once preached. It is the most sacred place of worship in the religion he founded in the 7th century, and which now has more than 500 million followers. The inspired city welcomes almost 200,000 pilgrims every year, all coming to dedicate anew their faith, filling the mosque called the Kaaba. They kiss a black stone said to have been given Abraham by the angel Gabriel. The ceremony reaches its climax as the Muslims mill past a white stone pillar, throwing 7 pebbles at the devil in the name of their God, Allah.
Due in part to the advent of jet travel, more of the faithful are able to make this long journey. Some 2 million now pay homage each year. Does this pilgrimage change them in some way? What does the Muslim expect to bring back with him or her from it?
The pilgrimage itself provides for them an intense spiritual experience. It is extremely intense. It brings about a state of spirituality that they cannot achieve with any other religious activity. Also, traditionally, as one returns from the pilgrimage, the status has already been changed. They acquire prestige, they acquire importance in their family and in their groups or their villages, in their towns.
Far from Mecca, another pilgrimage is called for by those of the Hindu faith. For several thousand years, it has been undertaken every 12 years when the stars are thought to be in their most favorable conjunction. Called Kumbh Mela, meaning Great Fair, it is both a mystical religious rite and a festive occasion of staggering proportions.
The Kumbh Mela is a remarkable event, unparalleled on the planet. According to some reports, up to 30 million people visited the last Kumbh Mela in Allahabad in 1989. This is as many people as live in the entire state of California.
But why this remote stretch of the Holy River for the site of the pilgrimage? What powerful message could reach and attract so many followers? A myth dating back 1,500 years tells of several gods fighting over a valued urn of sacred ambrosia. The magical liquid could provide immortality. In the struggle, 4 drops fell to earth, one of them landing on this spot of the Ganges. Ever since then, this has been a holy place. "24 years ago, 350 people were crushed to death here. To prevent such a tragedy from reoccurring, the government has allocated $40 million to assure the 5-week-long event will be safe. Now 17,000 laborers work around the clock to build new bridges and roads. 4,000 acres have been set aside for the devout millions expected to converge here. Sanitation and health are primary concerns, as inoculations and thousands of trench latrines are prepared, with tons of pesticides held at the ready. And so, as the February event approaches, millions of Hindus, high priests, families, homeless holy men, the rich and poor, set off on a journey that may take days for some, months for others. The goal of all is to bathe at least once in the sacred water during the prescribed dates. Kumbh Mela attracts these millions for another reason. It is the only religious ritual in which all Hindus are united.
The very, very wealthy will make the pilgrimage. The very, very, very poor will also make the pilgrimage. People of castes that would never commingle find themselves together in the same water of the Ganges. Also, all different religious persuasions within Hinduism commingle within the Kumbh Mela context.
While Kumbh Mela will be celebrated for 5 weeks, only 5 days are considered the holiest for bathing. These waters of the Ganges are believed to have the power to purify the faithful of all past sin. Possibly, they also will be blessed with the liberation for which all Hindus pray, that after this life, they will never have to return to this world in another incarnation.
Sakala Suravadhu Jyota Vistirna Toe Purna Brahma Sarupe.
This man has held his right arm in the air without moving it for 11 years, its muscles totally atrophying in the process. This was done as penance, in hope his suffering will free him from the cycle of birth and rebirth.
The ritual experience heightens our sensual awareness. So on the one hand, India quite often is known for its doctrines of renunciation, of withdrawing from the world, but simultaneously, India presents the most spectacular celebrations of the joys of the world, particularly as experienced as they only can be through the senses themselves.
An estimated 600,000 people a day pour into the sacred grounds. 10,000 security guards are required to oversee the densely populated tent city. Remarkably, virtually no crimes of any kind are reported during the festival. However, some 40,000 adults and children will become separated temporarily from their families during the festival. Itinerant monks, who live exclusively on the charity of others, find both respect and comfort at the Kumbh Mela. Affluent worshippers see to it that substantial cash donations and quantities of food are distributed amongst them.
भी करना चाहिए। तो जो हमारे समाज के श्रेष्ठ लोग हैं, हमारे महामंडलेश्वरों के भक्त लोग हैं, वो अपने धन को पवित्र करने की भावना से साधु संतों को भोजन कराते हैं, उससे उनका धन पवित्र होता है। महात्मा लोग उनके कल्याण की कामना करते हैं।
The lives of billions on the planet are still affected by ancient rites, most of which are peaceful. One of the most dramatic, physically challenging rituals passed down through the ages has been the male rite of passage, that ritual wherein a boy becomes a man before the community. In many Native American tribes, there were many young braves who volunteered for a ceremony that was excruciatingly painful. It entailed being hung from poles by their nipples or the skin on their backs. This ancient ritual, considered primitive and inhumane by U.S. government authorities, was abolished once the tribes had been confined to reservations. Many regard this as an unjustifiable intrusion on another culture's belief system. They also think it reflects on the dearth of meaningful ritual in the lives of Americans and Europeans themselves.
I think the West is ritually poverty-stricken. Our ritual resources are very thin. We put very little of our time, money, and energy into them. And there are several historical reasons for that. The various Reformations, the Lutheran, the Swiss Calvinist Reformation, and the Anglican Reformation cut back ritual considerably. That, coupled with the Industrial Revolution, which made us enormously interested in cost effectiveness, made us suspicious of ritual.
While many in the West scorn rituals that involve bodily mutilation, numerous cultures still support such practices. In the South Pacific, a traditional rite of passage as grimly violent as the one once practiced in America among Indians has continued unabated for centuries. Along the Sepik River in New Guinea, the crocodile is a common sight. For the villagers of Krambit, the creature symbolizes evil, and long ago a ritual was devised to rid them of their fear of it. For the young men here to pass into manhood, they must prove themselves by being scarred with a likeness of the crocodile's eyes and scales. In a ritual attended by the entire community, the boy is ceremoniously dragged away from his family. The surgical cutting that follows is bloody, believed necessary to release the mother's blood from the adolescent. He is now free to enter manhood as a proud, strong, independent figure. How well he endures the pain will reflect his future status among his peers. Cold water temporarily numbs the pain. Plant oil and mud will facilitate the healing. Above all, this young man has proven to himself that he has come of age. Now he can hunt the crocodile with other men, fearlessly. In another part of the world, the body is also the object of ancient rituals, but for a totally different purpose. Body piercing is an age-old custom in Southeast Asia. Why is it done? What significance is attached to it, or walking on hot coals, the climax to a 10-day ceremony in Phuket? Do the participants feel pain? Why don't we see blood? Is what the Western eye sees perhaps not what the Eastern practitioner is experiencing? In Singapore, an important 2-day Hindu festival known as Thaipusam is underway. Held in honor of the ancient mythical god Lord Murugan, those who are about to prove their full devotion must complete a physical ritual that indeed challenges logic. The devotees carry the kavadi, the elaborate crown-like tribute to the god, in a mile-long parade outside the temple. They have prepared for this purification ceremony for months by meditation and abstention from smoking, alcohol, and sex. The kavadi can weigh up to 40 pounds. The weight is borne by an elaborate system of aluminum rods and delicate chains, all of which are supported by being directly attached to the skin. What belief is so strong, it has convinced these people to undertake this daring ritual?
If one chooses to identify oneself as a candidate for sanctity, that person, that individual, makes a decision to enter into a sort of pain, to enter into a moment of purification that can be transformative. Sometimes evidenced through moments of possession, sometimes evidenced by moments of tranquility, and sometimes through just an abiding peace and happiness that will return to one days or even years after having undergone this strenuous activity.
Amazingly, not a drop of blood is spilled in the ceremony. Nor does it appear these people are feeling real pain. Many observers believe they have induced a trance-like state which has eliminated tension. But can this totally explain the phenomenal sight we've been witnessing?
I'm not exactly sure whether it's the depth of their trance, whether it's some other physiological training they've had, biofeedback, whatever. Clearly, I think it's as if the blood vessels are just stopped or just clamped off. I prefer to think about rituals like this rather than being somehow primitive. I prefer to think about them as coming from people who have expanded plausibility structures. They have more ways of thinking about possibilities in the world sometimes than we with our scientific outlooks have.
If the body-piercing experience is a transcendent one for the individual devotee, it is also intended that family and friends are meant to share in the exceptional achievement. Taipusam is a communal celebration. When we return, how some cultures assure the dead they are a living presence. The city of Jericho, described in the Bible as the first site Joshua had of the Promised Land, as well as the site of the Jews' first victorious battle, can also claim several other impressive credentials. It is the oldest city on Earth to have been continuously inhabited. Scientists confirm that age to be 10,000 years. Recently, skulls were unearthed there, providing scientists with a startling revelation. By treating the skulls artistically, covering them with clay and inserting shells in the eyes, Neolithic man did not just bury his dead, he venerated them. Before we could read or write, we had rituals to honor our ancestors.
One of the reasons ancestor veneration is such an important theme in world ritual is because ritual itself is about making connections. It's about connectedness and interconnectedness. Even though a person is departed, we still, in some manner, you don't have to explain it, maybe it's by memory, but whatever the manner is, we are still connected with those who have come before us.
Most cultures today have rituals that honor the deceased. However, it was the Chinese philosopher Confucius, 2,500 years ago, who taught that respect for the dead and the living should be considered one principle. Until recent tributes such as this one, all homage to Confucius had been forbidden by the communist government. He'd been branded a subversive for advocating loyalty to family over allegiance to the state.
There's been a revival of the Confucius's birthday ceremony, initially performed in 1986 by a troupe of actors employed to reenact the ritual. Because they wanted it to be authentic, they had a very hard time finding people who had witnessed it prior to 1949 and could remember enough of the details, so that there was some reliance on some outside scholars as well to help reconstruct this tradition.
These costumes and every ritualistic gesture duplicate court ceremonies that were performed in Confucius's lifetime. But why did the Chinese communists of this century find his teaching so dangerous? Perhaps because Confucius also preached that we were meant to further ourselves in this life as individuals. Mr. Ryu Chan-yu is a devout Confucian. Here in South Korea, as well as in other Far Eastern countries, the ancient teachings have been applied to modern businesses, with great success. Confucius also asserted that the family be at the heart of society, with sons serving fathers. In big businesses like this defense contractor's, the idea is applied figuratively. The employer is the patriarch, the elder. The employees, his dutiful and well-treated sons. A harmonious workplace is considered the main criterion for a smooth-running major industry. Abiding by Confucian values throughout his life, Mr. Yu believes they are responsible for bringing him to his present station in society. His wealth has allowed him to build a shrine to an ancestor to whom he feels beholden, a minister of defense in the 16th century. Twice a year, he performs this ritual to his memory.
Ritual plays a very important role in the life of a Confucian, in that it, along with virtue, are the two cornerstones of Confucianism. The goal in Confucianism is to become a virtuous person whose every interaction with other people occurs in a ritual-like context. According to Confucius, this was the way that we should live about all of our relationships in life.
The human being has always been stunned by the fact of death and has wondered, again, perhaps from time immemorial, if death is final. Many cultures answered that the spirit was somehow still around, though invisible. And indeed, it was not only a matter of respect for the ancestors, but also a matter of not making the ancestors angry by disrespecting them.
Virtually every culture reveres its dead, whether out of love or fear of the departed or some of both. It is one ritual that will undoubtedly never die. When we return, the extraordinary range of rituals that shape our lives. "40,000 years ago, before there was spoken language as we know it, rituals were practiced by Stone Age mystics who made their way into the depths of dangerous caves to draw on walls. Not simply drawings of life as they knew it, but also imaginings of a world beyond. Rites of a religious nature, those that relate to the mysteries of our spiritual life, are known to have been practiced ever since that far distant time. During the ensuing millennia, these rituals have become layered with more and more symbolic textures. In our day, the Catholic Mass is perhaps one of the most formalized, elaborate ceremonies being performed. But ritual is not confined only to our religious needs. Ritual also satisfies other human urges.
4th of July fireworks are clearly intended to effect the transformation of state from sort of, well, this is just another ho-hum day, to, is this a great country or what? So too is the allegiance to the flag and many other sorts of rituals regarding the political structure, from the simple salute to ticker tape parades for heroes. These are ways of creating in the participants in the ritual a certain kind of emotional high, a transformation of feeling that binds one to the values, norms of the wider community.
But do all rituals serve the betterment of the community? Are there some that shouldn't be esteemed?
I don't want to leave the impression that I think all rituals are good. Rituals can be enormously destructive. I mean, if there was a ritual master, it was Hitler. So you can use ritual to abuse, to oppress, to repress emotions. Certainly the Olympics clearly have social value. The Olympics are one of those few occasions when we, other than war, when we think globally. In the Olympics, the intention was not simply to have competition, but the intention was to create a kind of global or world consciousness. So when I say, I wish we had better, richer rites, I mean that. I don't simply mean I wish we had more.
Ritual at its best often has the power to uplift both the individual and the community as a whole.
In India, the poverty is of a scale virtually unimaginable. The people have nothing. Yet, even in the poorest of the poor areas, there is a vitality, there is a spirit, there is a resilience to the people, aided by this ritual view that makes India a far more pleasurable place to be than the deep seeds of poverty that we find in this country.
I think that rites and rituals to mark the various phases of our individual life cycles are extremely important. They lend meaning to our lives. They give a sense of flow rather than a chaotic sense of flux.
Dear Heavenly Father, bless all the family gathered around this table. For all these and thy many mercies and blessings, we thank thee. Amen. Amen.
The revival is in our hands. We can enrich custom. We can improvise on custom and make these times of passage very beautiful. I'm for reviving rituals slowly, slowly within our families, within the family space.
A major legacy of modern science has been our ability to reach into space for answers to eternal questions. But are we perhaps looking too much into the future at the expense of our past? For those who believe good rituals are vital to moral, strong cultures, the times are precarious. For them, our survival as a global community depends less on advances in computer technology and more on the spoken and unspoken ways people deal with each other's human needs. The coded language of ritual that we need to unravel on our journey in search of history.